Sarfaraz Khan has triggered the enormous debate of do India pick their test team on the basis of the IPL, which is not really necessarily a bad question. So we're going to put all this into context. So everyone's going to play selector here. Shashank Kishore watches more domestic cricket than most of the selectors. Nagraj Golapudi now knows who's going to apply for the vacant selector position. And Dustin and George will stir the pot like we do and make sense of this subject. Dustin, there's a reason we are picking this as our starting point. But it's not a bad thing, right?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I guess the point is that if you look at the Ranji Trophy top scorers, for example, for the last season, most of the names that you see towards the top are not really even being considered for selection. And you have, as you said, a player like Sarfaraz Khan who's got runs in domestic cricket for years now that is not being really considered for selection. And then you have players like Yashasvi Jaiswal and Ruturaj Gaikwad. You're right, they do have good first-class records. But it seems like the IPL is what has put them over the top and got them into the reckoning for the test team, not just their first-class records.
Yeah. Now, personally, I think it's the IPL has a higher standard of bowling, right, George? It tells you things that perhaps first-class cricket today in its current form does not. We all know that it's important to have a good, solid domestic structure, but it's fair to say that when you look at Gaikwad and you look at Jaiswal, they seem the part for international cricket. Maybe Sarfaraz Khan doesn't. And he and a lot of others would say, how can you say that without giving Sarfaraz Khan the opportunity? Look at all the runs he got. So how do we put that in perspective?
So I was having a discussion with some of my other friends, on this whole issue and brought up an interesting point, actually. He said, for me, it's a red flag that Sarfaraz scores so many runs in domestic cricket in an attacking style, but can't cut it in or hasn't cut it yet in the IPL. And that for me is a red flag. If you look at a lot of the other India test players who also play the IPL, they have decent records in the IPL. Some are exceptional, some are pretty good, but no one has a bad record in the IPL. Having said that, Sarfaraz's non-selection, I would like to say one thing. It's pretty poor that people in the BCCI hide under the cloak of anonymity and say questionable things about a young player's attitude and all of that. I think that's really the thing. There might be actual cricketing reasons for his non-selection, but someone should front up and explain what those are.
George mentions the attacking style, which I guess I take the point, right? If you're an attacking player, you should be able to cut it in the IPL or at least not look terrible. I don't mean to be too harsh to Sarfaraz, but he's not looked great in the IPL. Sarfaraz should have done better. But then there's the case of Abhimanyu Easwaran, players who would want to play and only play perhaps red ball cricket, first class cricket to make it to the test team. And now these guys are jumping the queue. Is that a reflection of first class cricket, Shashank?
In a sense, I think Abhimanyu Easwaran has every right to feel a little hard done by, because he's done the hard yards and he's done everything that the selectors have asked of him. He scored runs for Bengal. He's captained them to 2 finals. He scored runs for East Zone in the Duleep Trophy. He scored runs for India A across West Indies, in New Zealand, at home. So he scored runs in all conditions. So I think Abhimanyu Easwaran is a case of somebody who shouldn't be judged on the fact that he doesn't play in the IPL and he's only playing first-class cricket. Somebody like a Priyank Panchal, for example, again, he's been India A captain for 3 years in a row now. For the last 3 years, he's been scoring runs, mountains of runs for Gujarat in the Ranji Trophy. He's improved his white ball game tremendously, has scored at a strike rate of 147 in the Mushtaq Ali as an opener. He was part of the reserves in the Gujarat Titans during the inaugural edition. So there are signs that he's shown that shows that his white ball game is getting better. So there are a few players who've done the hard yards and who've done everything asked of them, but don't get to play in the IPL. So you can't form that and say that domestic cricket has no value, or IPL performances should be kind of also factored in.
Right. So a selector's job, I guess, has changed. As if, Nagaraj, in all the years you've covered it in cricket, selectors have in the past, even in a pre-IPL era, not necessarily rewarded the highest run getters in Ranji Trophy with test caps. There are prominent examples over the years. But are they also not helping their own cause with how they go about selection these days?
Can't answer that question directly because no selector has picked my call from the selection. So, just to be very clear, yes, transparency is very important, but that is the bane of Indian cricket, and BCCI has to take the blame, not the selectors. Clearly, I think if you look at this previous selection panel, which was Chetan Sharma, Sunil Joshi was part of this panel. These guys actually picked up the phone and spoke to players. And if you remember the classic example, two big examples were last year in 2022 after the South Africa tour. I think it was Rahane and Pujara were dropped, and everyone thought this is full stop for their careers, correct? No, but they called them up and told them that go and score runs in domestic cricket. And both of them did that in their own way. Rahane actually is back because of that domestic runs. The IPL form has coincided and it helps. It helps. On the other hand, you have an example like Shashank pointed out, Easwaran. He's like in a spot where he doesn't know what to do. He's done everything he thinks he had to do, but he doesn't know why he's not part of that team. He was part of the team, but he couldn't get to play in that 2021 England trip when he was drafted in as a replacement. He was part of the squad, but he didn't get to play. So he didn't get to show what he can, whether he's capable of playing at the highest level. But we don't know whether he's been spoken to. If I have to believe the people I've spoken to, he has not been yet called and told why. Yeah, I think the selector's primary job and responsibility is of care also, to tell the player that why you've not been picked. And there have been examples where players have been told. And I'll give you two prominent examples. Rishabh Pant. Remember when, I think it was 2020 when he was dropped for the Australia trip, the limited overseas, he was told by a selector that you have to lose weight. And Pant took it under his chin and he worked hard. Ishant Sharma was dropped from that trip, Australia Test series. I think he was told that we don't think that you have that workload.
Shashank, I'll come to you. In Sarfaraz's case, there will be some conjecture, right? IPL, we've seen not good, as George said. Perhaps he's not as fit as you'd like for a test player to look like today. Now, that's again conjecture. But that being said, from 2017 to 19, India played 24 tests, 8 per year on average. Post-pandemic, they've played 8 tests in all. So clearly there's less A cricket. And in the case of Easwaran, selectors are clearly saying, yeah, okay, just first class or red ball is not a good enough criteria for us.
Yeah, there have been a few examples of players who've been picked purely on red ball cricket, although, it's pre-pandemic. Someone like a Hanuma Vihari, I mean, he didn't play in the IPL, but he again scored heavily in domestic cricket, average of 60 plus, and again, some decent attacks in the south. Mayank Agarwal was part of the IPL for many, many years, and until recently didn't have a massive payday like he does now. When he came into the test team, he scored and he came into the squad on the back of about 1,300 runs that he made in the Ranji season in 2017-18. So there are examples of players who forced their way into the test team purely on the back of first-class numbers. And I think in Sarfaraz's case, what hasn't worked in his favor is the fact that his India A record has been a little modest and he hasn't been able to churn out at least even one big score. So I think that's probably also gone against him.
I have a question for both Shashank and Nagraj. Is it actually a problem with the selectors, or is there a problem with India's first-class cricket? Because I have 3 major problems with the Ranji Trophy. One is that the format is changing almost every year. You now have 32 teams in the elite group of Ranji Trophy, which means that there is a dilution of competition. A lot of the runs that players are accumulating might be against weaker sides. That's one. The second is, if you look at when it's played between December and January, that's right in the middle of India's home season. So just to give you an example, during the last Ranji Trophy, there were 33 players who played for India in one format or the other. That means those 33 players are missing parts of the Ranji Trophy, if not all of it, which means you're not getting a look at them. You're not getting a look at those players. Plus also for the players in the Ranji Trophy, they're not getting to play against those guys, right? So they're not facing an Arshdeep Singh or an Umran Malik. They're not facing the best of India's bowlers. The third point is, if I'm not wrong, around 7-8 years ago, there seemed to be a move to actually prepare domestic pitches that had a bit of grass, favored seam bowling. Just looking over the Ranji statistics from last year, there are, I think, 2 seamers in the top 10 wicket takers. It's again all, kind of flat tracks, spinners bowling a lot of overs, which is not giving you a decent idea of whether these guys how will a Sarfaraz Khan fare in Australia on a fast deck or South Africa.
The drastic reduction in India A tours is kind of evident in the sense like that's the place where these guys get exposed to quality fast bowlers. And guys like Sarfaraz, whatever little they have played, there have been selectors have jotted down certain points about the technique and etc. and all that. I'm not saying that he's not fit enough to play those things, but that's where the selectors make those observations. Okay, fine, and that's where they also have to go and tell the player that this is what we expect you to. As far as the quality of fast bowling goes, you can't blame the batters. they face what they get. Some of those bowlers who have been part of India A and who have been kind of come through the ranks like an Unadkat, or even for a matter Mohammad Siraj and all these guys, they have played a decent bit of first class cricket. So if you're asking a question that whether the level of domestic cricket is or fast bowling is good enough for us to gauge the quality of the batter, there's a direct no, yes or no. There's not black and white answer to that. I feel that they are good enough. They're good enough. The quality of domestic cricket is good enough. Whether the pitches, I'm sitting overseas, so I don't know what the quality of the pitches are. Shashank.
You're not supposed to reveal that. You're not supposed to reveal that, Nagaraj. I don't think
Well,
so.
that will be transparent there.
Yeah. Okay. We're going on. So let's get just quick comments after everything that we've heard. If you want to just summarize where you stand on the subject, George.
I'll just say that there's a good business opportunity in developing an AI platform where you can put in all these parameters and it spits out who are the most likely people to cut it.
Oh, don't do that. No, don't do that, George. Not another one of those. Okay. Shashank.
Have the chairman of selectors address the media, address all the stakeholders after every selection meeting, and clearly mention why certain players have been picked, why certain players have not been picked.
Couldn't agree more. I'll give mine in case Justin and Naga want to counter it. I just think we're entering a time now where players have to be prolific, have to be steady in IPL cricket and back it up with a good first-class record. It's not like you're asking Glenn Maxwell or Joss Butler to suddenly play Test cricket at the back of just white ball performances. It just is a reality of the times. You feel for Ishwaran, but it'll just be the case that any player who makes a mark at the IPL and has a 40, 50, 60 average in first-class cricket will keep jumping the queue. So that's perhaps where we're headed.
As a closing remark, it's just that you also need to understand, and very important, this is the selectors' challenge. The team management wants a certain side of play to play, and this is where I think
it's a really good point. Yeah, it's a really important point. It's not just
Gaikwad and
selectors.
Jaiswal have been picked over and above this. It's not the runs that matter, or the way they have scored runs in an IPL might have mattered. Of course, it matters. That's where the IPL comes in, because how does the player handle the pressure? And this is where the team management feels that a Jaiswal might be not just as a left-hand top order choice. I feel that this guy can actually make me play the way, set the tempo that I want the team. That's what Rohit Sharma might do. But at the same time, the responsibility of Dravid and Rohit is to call Ishwaran or somebody to tell that this is the reason, please don't give up.
I have one closing idea, which is if India is serious about red ball cricket, why not find a 2 or 3 week window in the calendar where you have some kind of a challenger trophy in red ball cricket that includes some of the test players, the international players, so we really get an idea of where these young players playing Ranji Trophy stand against that quality of opposition.
Thank you very much to Nagaraj, Dustin, Shashank and George. This was yet another ESPN Cricinfo Run Order.